welcome back to Above the Break. This is episode 3 of our 2025-26 NBA season show on the Ball Institute Network. I'm your co-host, Ahan Rangche. Joined by a new co-host. We usually have Bobby Stanley. Today we have Flu Game Bobby Stanley joining us. Bobby, thanks for being here. You look good with the cap. I could not pull off that pink and white hat combo, but you are, so thanks for being here.
It's comfy season. I woke up in the middle of the night. I had chills, and I was sweating and body aches, and I laid in bed most of the day. But we have a pretty good lineup of topics that I truly didn't want to miss. So I'm excited, man.
You know what I had chills about in the middle of the night? Tyler Hero is back for my favorite basketball team. In his season debut, he dropped 24 points on 67% true shooting and 67% from the field. You know how that happens? No threes, no free throws, and 8 for 9 on floaters. So that was the wildest game to watch. I had a Bam Adebayo first quarter over 4.5 points bet. He went 0 for 3 from the field. The 3 field goal misses were 2 missed hooks and an airballed 3, and 1 for 4 from the free throw line. It turns out that Miami's rims, specifically, or just the Miami side of the rim, so just that rim, not the other one, was crooked in the first half. So that was fun.
You lasted longer than I thought bringing up Tyler Hero. I thought it was going to be at least a solid 5-10 seconds. You made it a full 45 seconds. I applaud you, sir.
But we'll get to talk more about the Heat later on the show. But I just had to get that off my chest. That if you see me smiling more often today, it's because life is good again. You know what I mean? So
no, I hear you. They're looking good. They're looking good. I know we're going to allude to them as we get further into the show, but I'm excited to hear your take. I'm always pretty open-minded about Miami, but you'll come with some good heat. But I love our first topic, man. It's what got me up in the morning seeing this.
I'm glad. So let's just get right into it. Now, we love our role players. We love our players that are playing like all-stars. And Bobby, you write for us every week, and you wrote an article on Derek Queen a couple of weeks ago, and now he is playing like one of the best rookies in the NBA. He was a plus 4,000 to win Rookie of the Year when you wrote that article. It's much more expensive of a price now. We like to be ahead of the curve, so it's November 25th right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to get super ahead of the curve. We're going to start thinking all-star game. Let's do a draft of building a team of players based on this season. So not their career, just teams building for this season. But we can only use players who have never made an all-star game, and we also cannot use rookies. Now, usually, since we're co-hosts in this, we're going to do a snake draft. We have equal rights for what we want to do on the podcast, but it is my company. So I'm going to give you the choice. Do you want the first pick, or do you want me to have the first pick and then you get 2 and 3?
I'll give you the first pick. I want 2 and 3.
Okay, I actually agree that there's a nice 2 and 3 combo that I'd love to have. So with my first overall pick, I'm gonna let you have your boy because I know who's going number 2. I'm gonna take who I think is by far the best player to never make an all-star game in the NBA right now. I'll take Jamal Murray. Now, I've been lower on the Nuggets than most people. We yapped about the Nuggets last episode, but if the Nuggets are to prove me wrong this year, if they are to make a finals run, or if they are to finish as a top 2 or 3 seed in the West, a huge part of it will be that Jamal Murray is playing like an all-star, and we don't talk enough about how he's had multiple season-altering, one season-missing injury, and he's just gotten better every single year. And in the 2023 to 24 season, he shot 43% from 3, and I think overall he's having a better season this season than he did that year. 39% from 3, averaging 23.2 points per game and 7 assists per game. And to me, what stands out is because I think the Nuggets' depth is not all that, I'm more impressed by how Jamal Murray is having to carry this team every single night in the regular season, often in back-to-backs, and doing just a phenomenal job at that. So happy to take Jamal Murray with my number 1 pick.
Yeah, he was the clear number 1. I had him at the top of my list. I actually watched some of the Nuggets last night against Memphis, and he just looked comfortable. He looked pulling up from 3. The game got a little bit close in the fourth quarter. I think Memphis cut it to like 6 or 7, and Jamal Murray put that away pretty quick. And that was right before the insane Jokic pass that we saw trending this morning. So, no, he's He's the number one. I'd be more shocked if he didn't go one. But I get 2 picks, and the first one's no surprise. Jalen Johnson, Atlanta Hawks. I got some money on him to win Most Improved Player. I think he was up for it last year, but injuries, I think, limited him to like 35, 37 games, something like that. So Jalen Johnson playing at an all-star level. I'd be shocked if he wasn't an all-star this season. So he would be my first pick. And then the snake part of this. So there's a couple guys in the snake piece. You can go a bunch of different ways. I'm going to go, it's kind of obvious. I'll go Denny Avdija of the Portland Trail Blazers. He was coming on late last season. You get a little skeptical when you hear about a guy really blowing up in March and April. It's, teams are kind of throwing in the towel. But he's carried it into this season. And he's doing that with Shaedon Sharpe with that high usage rate. So he's finding his spots. He's filling up the stat sheet. Would not be shocked to see Denny actually get an all-star nod this year. So I'm going Jalen Johnson and Denny Avdija as my first 2.
Dude, so, I mean, when I said that I was pretty sure who you were going to take number 2, like, it wasn't Jalen Johnson. I figured you'd take Denny. I would have also taken Denny if I had the turn, averaging 25 points a game and guarding up. And, like, the Wizards trade in hindsight, like, sneakily one of the worst trades we've seen in recent memory.
Yep.
But the reason I would have passed up on Jalen Johnson if I had that turn personally is because, again, like we were talking about this right before the show. I mean, I'm overly skeptical of Duke players, but Jalen Johnson, incredible offensively, and it kind of feels like he's like a better, younger version of the Aaron Gordon we saw when the Nuggets won the championship. But I've been slightly disappointed with Jalen Johnson's defense. I think he should be a way better defender than he actually is. So maybe I'm not giving him enough credit overall for his game because I'm disappointed by his defense. But I respect the 2-wing strategy to start the draft for sure. I'm going to take the guy who I thought you were going to take, and that's Austin Reaves. And Austin Reaves has, undrafted, never made an all-star game. And to me, like, all the things that I like, I say super publicly, and I advertise a lot about like Tyler Hero, who, like, I've been a Tyler Hero fan since the Kentucky days. Like, a lot of that applies to Austin Reaves too. People don't think that he can be the number 1 scorer on a team in the playoffs because he's had some stinky playoff games. He's had occasions where he's had to be the number 1 option on the floor and he's not come through in big spots. But to me, like, he is arguably the best number 2 option guard in the NBA this season. He's had to play some games with no Luka or LeBron, obviously, on the court, and he's come through against some pretty tough defenses. I think the highlight for me was that Minnesota game, and Minnesota like has a lot of good point of attack defenders, Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, etc. And he played like a number 1 option in that game, playmaking in transition, as well as just as a scorer, and then eventually capping it off with the game winner. So Austin Reaves, to me, like, I don't know how many All-Star games he's going to make in his career. He's going to be perennially underrated. But I'm happy to start with a Jamal Reaves backcourt, even though I'm going to have to work on defense the rest of the draft.
So you went 2 guards. I went 2 wings. Okay. And then how's this? And now I go, and now we alternate?
And oh yeah, I do have another pick. I got so taken aback by letting Reaves fall to me. You know what? There's a couple of ways we can go here. I'm gonna go ahead and take a wing as well, just because like if our teams were to play, in a 5v5 battle, I need some wing size here as well. So I'm gonna pass up on who I think may be the slightly better player, just to make sure I get some recognition for Mikal Bridges. I feel like Mikal Bridges, another like guy who continually gets like foreseen or what's the right word? I don't have the right word for this. Mikal Bridges continually gets ignored as one of those like best number 3 options in the league, but I truly think he's been one of the best number 3 options in the league for a long, long time. And this season, like, remember when we were worried about Mikal Bridges not being able to hit threes because his form looked funny when he came to the Knicks, and then he started off the season like historically bad from 3. Well, this season that is completely resolved. He is one of the best 3-point catch and shoot 3-point guys in the league. And he guards 1 through 3. Often he guards 1 through 4. He does that at a high level. And oftentimes with Jalen Brunson missing some time or with Karl-Anthony Towns in foul trouble, he's kind of been the number 1 option on offense and leading the break and transition. And like, everyone knows about his record, about how many games he's played to open up his career, but he is super, super physical for someone that skinny, and he does it on both offense and defense. So I'm going to take Mikal Bridges. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he made an all-star game at some point in the next couple of years. But he's probably not going to make it this year. He has to be on my team, though, because I've been high on him since he was the number 2 option on a finals team, and we just forget about that. So, yeah, I'm going to take Mikal. We get some defense on our squad there, too.
Okay. You alluded to defense before and the fact that I need a guard. So I'm building this out. I'm going to zag a little bit. It's not too bad. But I'm going Derek White as my point guard. 2 second-team all-defenses in his career, finished 8th and 10th in Defensive Player of the Year. He's not having a great year, and I know that's kind of part of this. I mean, his true shooting percentage dropped, his 2-point shooting percentage dropped. I think he's taking on a different role. He's shooting a full almost 2.5, 3 shots a game more than last year. But I mean, anytime I can get an ex-San Antonio Spur as my guard, I'm going to have Derek White. They list him as a shooting guard. Derek White's going to be my point guard. I had a little exposure on him to lead the NBA in assists this year, just because I thought the number was absurd, and probably for good reason. I mean, he's at 5.2 assists per game. Obviously, that's not going to get it done, but if I can get a defensive guard who can also hit the 3-point shot with these 2 guys, I'm going Derek White. And then there's really 2 bigs. There's 2 bigs here that you can go with. One jumped off the screen this year. The other in years past. I'm going to play fast, and I'm going Jalen Duren at center. So I have Derek White, Jalen Johnson, Denny Avdija, and Jalen Duren.
I'm going to say this. If our teams matched up, you are posting me the fuck up all game long. I respect the Duren pick, but also like just addressing the Derek White stuff, because we are doing a draft where it's kind of like central to like what they're doing this season, and Derek White's probably like the worst player that's going to go in this draft if you only consider this season. But I respect you acknowledging that like
it's a down year.
Yeah, and like I respect you acknowledging like the spirit of this draft, right? It's players like, if we're trying to build a team, right? That's what makes this fun. We're trying to build a team, and Derek White, like part of the issue has been like last year, one of the nice systems that I had was you fade Derek White when Tatum is out because he depends so much on the Tatum gravity, the kickouts, the open catch and shoots. And he's just not getting that this year because he's getting guarded like a number 1, number 2 option every day. But with the spirit of this team, like Derek White's not the number 1 option. He gets the gravity of Denny Avdija and Jalen Johnson. So as a fit for your team, I respect it.
I'm building a squad here. I'm building a 5 that I think can be competitive, but I kick it back to you, sir. There's a couple of big names that I thought would have been gone already.
And you know what? I did not think this guy would fall this far, so I'm going to completely reconstruct the idea of a team that I have. You know, basketball is positionless, and I'm truly proving that here because you took the number 1 center off my board in Jalen Duren. You obviously had to take Denny on your first turn. I did not think you would double up with Jalen Johnson and Denny Avdija. I'm going to have to move Mikal to power forward because he's done it in the past and he can do it. I know that. And I'm going to have to take, like, arguably the 3rd best player in terms of the season he's having this season. It's not biased if I'm getting him this low in the draft. I'm taking Norm Powell and playing him at the 3. He's been playing a lot of small forward this year as well because he's not a pushover defensively at all. Miami's playing at the number 1 pace in the NBA. This is well advertised. They're playing at a historically low rate of pick and roll. And thus, it is helping the counting stats of Norm Powell. But if I told you a player was averaging 25 points a game, 46% from 3, 60% effective field goal percentage, that is unironically an all-star season, no matter what angle you take. And he's getting a lot of the top defenders in the NBA this season because he has played every single game without Tyler Hero. So the best perimeter defender is guarding him. This is unquestionably an all-star. I think Norm Powell is going to be in the all-star game this year unless he misses extended time. I'm going to play him at the 3. And I'm going to follow that up with my last pick, I now have to take a center. And I'm fine with having to settle for the last pick as my center. because although you took Duran, who's having the best season of any center available in this draft, I'm going to take the guy who I still think is arguably the better player, and it's Isaiah Hartenstein. If you ranked all the non-All-Stars, or actually we do have access to this ranking, if you ranked every non-All-Star in the NBA this season, there's arguably no one more analytically valuable at the non-guard positions than Isaiah Hartenstein. Now, a lot of it comes from the fact that he plays with a great team. He plays with a team that's elite defensively 1 through 5 pretty much. But a lot of that is just him in that role just makes so much sense. And I need some defense on this team. I need a guy who can protect the rim if Jamal and Reeves are going to get blown by, right? So Michael can guard the best perimeter guy. Norm is no slouch. And Hartenstein's going to just be an elite rim protector for me. And the thing is, when you don't have like the top tier center, right? You don't have a Bam Adebayo, you don't have an Evan Mobley, like a two-way center like that who can switch. The next best thing you want in a tier 2 center is elite rim protection, and he doesn't just get blown by every single time if he has to switch onto the perimeter, right? And that's always the complaint with those one-dimensional centers like a Rudy Gobert is you put them in the pick and roll, you can expose them so easily. Hartenstein doesn't get picked on like that because he's mobile enough to hold his own. And if he's playing with a couple of great defenders, he can hold his own. And he is just objectively an all-round offensive player as well. It's why he works. When he has a good team around him like OKC, he can be a playmaking hub, which is great for guys like Reeves and Norm because he's going to get them catch and shoot threes. So I'm going to finish my draft with Jamal Murray, Austin Reeves, Mikal Bridges, Norm Powell, super undersized, but Isaiah Hartenstein's got me on the boards.
I would have bet my life he took Zubac there. But no, I mean, I got no problem
at shooting guard.
What's up?
You can play Zubac at shooting guard.
No, I do have my shooting guard locked and loaded. Do you want to do a 6-man? I mean, we got the guys.
We might as well. On the floor.
Well, my shooting guard, my 5th pick, he's playing his ass off this year. Probably because he's been thrusted into a role that he hasn't played his whole career. Benedict Mathurin is my 2 guard. So I got Derek White, Benedict Mathurin, Jalen Johnson, Denny Avdija, and Jalen Duren. I like that a lot.
If you had given me 20 guesses for who you would have taken with your last pick, I would have not guessed Benedict Mathurin. But I'm curious to hear your analysis on how high you are on Benedict Mathurin.
I think he's averaging like 24 points per game. The guy's a bucket. I know it can get a little bit carried away sometimes, but that's why we have guys like Derek White and Jalen Johnson. He can score in the ISO situation. Let me look at his 3-point. I think that got a little bit better this year. I was drafting for need, which I guess you're not supposed to do, but I needed a 2 guard. Where's he at in 3-point percentage?
37.1% from 3.
Yeah, it's just a shade under his career high. So I'll take 37% from him, but almost 15 shots a game, 24 points per game. He's given me almost 7 rebounds. Turnovers a little bit higher than you want, but I don't want the ball in his hands that much. I want the ball in the hands of Derek White. So I got Mathurin as my 2. And should I just go into who my 6-man should be?
Yep, you got the 6-man pick.
This one's actually hard. There's 2 guys that really stand out. 3. I feel like if I go Franz Wagner, that I'm kind of overloaded at this, Denny, Jalen, small forward, power forward type move. I'm going to take Amen Thompson. I'll take Amen Thompson as a Swiss Army knife. He burned me last night. I had him going under on assists, but I made the bet before I realized 3 of the 4 best defenders on Phoenix were out, or else I would have never made the bet. But, I mean, going into this season, Amen Thompson they were saying, like, he's not on the table for Giannis. That's how high this Houston Rockets organization thought of him. So I'll take Amen Thompson as my Swiss Army knife. Could he play the 2? He brought up the ball a little bit. He brought up the ball a lot yesterday. So I got Amen as my 6-man. And I mentioned it in my write-up for Ball Institute. Just the best athlete on the floor. And it's very, very noticeable very quickly.
We're going to talk about the other Thompson brother in a few minutes, once we get to the main show. But I agree with you that there are so many good options here for six man. Like, want to give some shout outs to players I'm not drafting. Like, the fact that I'm going to leave Franz Wagner undrafted in this is kind of insane. Like, the wing talent in the NBA is just crazy. And everyone who's anti-analytics people, you would not have recognized talents like a Hartenstein or a Franz and put them on good teams, because these are not players who the anti-analytics crowd necessarily loves, because Franz Wagner's shot selection is very analytically driven. So I want to give a shout out to Franz. I also want to give a shout out to Jalen Johnson's teammate, Onyeka Okongwu. Like, I was seriously considering, like, if Duren and Hartenstein both went off the board, I would have picked Okongwu as a center. He's having a great season, and he's very, very underrated defensively. Also, like, we said no rookies, but we didn't say no year twos, right? And you took a young guy with Mathurin, you took a young guy with Amen Thompson. I think, like, perhaps the most underrated year two player is the guy who won Rookie of the Year. We don't talk about Stephon Castle as we don't talk about Stephon Castle as one of the highest ceiling guards in the future, but he certainly is. I think we've talked about him potentially being the third best player on a Spurs championship team. So, but I'm passing up on him because I'm going to stick with the spirit of the draft, and I'm going to take a guy who has a real shot at winning Sixth Man of the Year this year, and I'm going to take Jaime Jaquez. Now, I called that Jaime is going to have a sophomore slump because sophomore slumps are very common. It was clear he had to work on his jump shot to play a bigger role for the Heat. This year, not only has he made his three-point shot somewhat, it hasn't been fully serviceable in that he's shooting 20% in a small sample size. But if you look at the splits when he's wide open, if you look at the catch and shoot splits, they're somewhat serviceable. But 16.5 points per game, 6.4 rebounds per game, 5.4 assists per game off the bench. This is a do-it-all player, someone that showed those flashes in his rookie year as someone who can run a second unit. Then second year, he takes a leap. He takes a step back. And this year, he takes such a big leap that he would be starting for most teams in the NBA right now. Not OKC, not a couple of the elite teams, not Cleveland, but he truly can be a starter for many good teams, including the Heat. But the Heat love him running that second unit, so they're going to keep him off the bench. I think he's a better player than the current Sixth Man of the Year favorite, AJ Mitchell. So I'm happy with taking Jaime Jaquez as the sixth man who can guard as well, because I desperately need people who can guard after I took Jamal and Reeves.
Only two Miami Heat guys.
Yeah, only two.
That's not bad for you. That's not bad. You're trying to cut down.
I was trying to cut down, but unfortunately, he already made an All-Star game.
All right, man. I think our teams are good. I maybe drafted a little bit more for need and fit versus overall talent, because, like you said, I mean, Keontae George was another guy. Kason Wallace is another guy. Dyson Daniels is another guy. Trey Murphy is another guy. These are all guys that I had written down that, depending how you went, I would pivot to. I didn't have Austin Reeves on there, and I know that's shocking. But I mean, I should have. Obviously, I should have. But I guess I went really wing heavy now that I look at it. But yeah,
I love
fun
Murphy so much. It's like insane that I also forgot to write him down, I guess.
It's a fun exercise because I think a couple of these guys, especially in a weak East, and with some of the injuries we're seeing, I think we're going to see some name. I mean, Jamal Murray. It may almost be in his favor to not get it, so he can be Mike Conley 2.0. But Jalen Johnson should get it. Denny probably a backup. Jalen may even be a starter, depending on how they look at Cat. Austin Reeves should get it. Norman Powell in the East. So we of the 12 guys we drafted, we could see 5 or 6 of them in their first time All-Stars. So very cool, man. I like this. I like this exercise. And
maybe we'll do another one for playoff edition when we get to that point, because we're always thinking ahead. Let's talk about what's going on in the present state of the NBA, and it's been a few weeks where we're over a month into the NBA season at this point, and we talked about some of the top-notch teams, like the Raptors being one of the best teams in the NBA so far this season. Talked about them. We've yapped enough about the Nuggets. Let's talk about some teams that we haven't covered much. I'm gonna throw it right back to you, Bobby, because we have not talked much about the Lakers. You know how big I am, how big of a fan I am of JJ Redick. As a player, I loved him. I think he is one of the best head coaches in the NBA already. We don't talk enough about that. He's not going to win Coach of the Year because the award is broken. But there's some developments, such as a guy named LeBron James is starting to play games now. So what have you seen from the Lakers so far?
I was pleasantly surprised. I think DeAndre Ayton and Marcus Smart were two big question marks because you're asking for guys who not historically, but over the last 2-3 years, Jekyll and Hyde. What are you getting? Marcus Smart with some injuries, DeAndre Ayton, it's essentially motivation. They fit. They are. I mean, Marcus Smart is making just the little plays that keep possessions alive. So I think he's been a really good fit. Ayton is career resurgence, I guess if you want to call it. It's not a shocker playing with probably the best pick and roll man in the NBA, Luka Doncic. So I like what I see. I won't get to LeBron yet, but I do think there's still a move they need to make. I would like to see some bench scoring out of them. I would like to see a little bit longer defenders. Rui, I could do without. Gabe Vincent, I could do without. Dalton Connect, he's a throw-in any trade. So I'm curious to see what they package and what can they come back with. I'd love to see a Keon Ellis if they can bring him in, which is essentially what Bronny James was supposed to be, is Keon Ellis. It's not working out that way, but the thought is there. So he's a guy I have my eye on for them. And then it brings me to LeBron. So we've only had 2 games of LeBron. Both are against the Utah Jazz. I do think that was intentional. My initial observation, my first thought is the athleticism has finally waned. I mean, we've seen small incremental drops probably over the last 2-3 years, but still, I mean, from what his peak was to what the last 3 years were, you could still make the case he was like an elite athlete. I saw a couple shots last night, couple attacks at the basket where it looked he ran out of juice. His legs aren't there. And I know his shooting's going to come back. That will come with time. The touch around the rim, that will come with time. But realistically, he's averaging 14, 4.5, and 10. I don't think he's going to be averaging many rebounds this season. A majority of his buckets are coming in transition. So as soon as that shot goes up, he's gone. So I think that's going to hamper his rebounding numbers to a career low. The flip side of that, he can still win in the post with just his size and knowledge. That's your 10 assists a game. I think the season ends up shaking out 16, 4, and 9, but that's okay. That they can just take that from him. It's just that's not what we're used to when we talk about arguably the greatest player of all time. But that's what this Lakers team, I think can win with. So love Austin Reeves. Totally agree with you. He's one of the better number 2s in the NBA. Luka Doncic is playing some of the best basketball of his career. Ayton, you could say the same thing. Marcus Smart resurgence. I want 2 more guys to round out that roster. And we could talk about it when we talk trades. What does that mean for them? But I got my eye on Keon Ellis. And I'm curious what other move they can make to round this out. Because I also agree with you on Redick. They can, there's few teams that can give OKC fits. And Luka is the Thunder stopper. They can't defend him. I don't care who you throw at him. So I hope that doesn't end up being to the Western Conference Finals. Obviously, if it's the first or second round, that would suck. But they're sitting, I think they're second or third in the West right now. They're third in the West right now.
Yeah.
And they're, a half a game behind Denver. So they're right where they need to be. There's moves they can make, and we're going to see LeBron get in shape. But my first observation is the 25-7-7 is done.
And I think, I'm glad you talked about LeBron because I really don't know what to make of LeBron after 2 games against the Utah Jazz. Tonight they faced the Clippers in a cup game, and the Lakers have won a cup already. LeBron has that in his resume. I don't think most of the roster cares so much about the cup that they're going to, risk LeBron like playing 40+ minutes or anything. But I do still think every team takes pride in wanting to get their young guys a bag with the cup. So they still have, the cup in sights. And it'll be interesting to see in a higher stakes environment against, Clippers team that obviously they've not been great so far, but I still think they're better than the Jazz. Especially with Kawhi and Harden potentially both playing with no minutes limit, right? Like this is an environment that will tell a lot to me tonight. So I'm curious to see what level of effort and what shot selection we see from LeBron. But like to me, like the elephant in the room that the people always discuss for the Lakers is their center position. Ayton, I drafted Ayton in fantasy because I have a rule of thumb. If a starting center gets to play with Luka Doncic, you take them in fantasy, right? Ayton's offensive resurgence doesn't fully surprise me, but JJ Redick, has been getting the best out of most of his players since last year, since he got the job. And Ayton's level of effort, rebounding, protecting the rim without fouling, like that's been a pleasure to watch. So I'm glad Ayton's playing some good basketball. But like the elephant in the room that people discuss is like who's going to play that backup center. And everyone wanted Walker Kessler on the Lakers. It almost made too much sense last year. Didn't happen. Then people are like, let's get Nick Claxton. And I was like, that's probably a buy high. And so they went with the small ball stuff with Dorian Finney-Smith at the 5. Did not work great against the Timberwolves. They gave up a career night to Rudy Gobert in the playoffs. It sickened me. But the positive that I want to bring up, which people don't talk about enough, is we've seen how many times like Eric Spoelstra has come up with elite game plans against superstars and has won games because he eliminates the number one option. JJ Redick has done that a few times already since in his tenure with the Lakers. He beat the Nuggets as huge underdogs last year by building an effective wall centered around Rui Hachimura against Nikola Jokic. And that to me was like his first iconic moment as a Lakers head coach, was defeating the Nuggets that handily. And he's done that several times since last year. So I genuinely think JJ Redick should get some Coach of the Year love. But I'm going to use that as a transition to talk about my team as well, because a guy who has never won Coach of the Year, but is, I think we can both agree, is the best coach we have in the NBA right now overall. And they were plus money to make the playoffs. And we talked about it before the season that an Eric Spoelstra team with some really good players on his team should not be plus money to make the playoffs. And the Miami Heat have been a surprise to many. Now, am I surprised that they're arguably they're one of the best offenses in the league, even if you account for pace? Yeah, I'm surprised a little bit because Norm Powell is playing unreal basketball, and Jaime, even though I knew he would get better, Jaime is playing exceptionally well. I'm patting myself on the back for that draft. But Khalil Ware, like ever since he got a text from Udonis Haslem saying your motor has to be better, Khalil Ware has been playing like an all-star center. And, I really wish our first-round draft pick did not have to be told to have a motor. But give him credit. Once he was told, once he was yelled at by Udonis Haslem, he's been playing amazing. And to me, like what people need to talk about is Bam Adebayo. I will stand by. He's the best defender in the NBA right now, but he finally has a lockdown defender at the point of attack at the guard position to work with in Davion Mitchell. Mm-hmm. And to me, Davion Mitchell, it would not be crazy to say it since the big three era, where since the years of struggle in between, since that time, other than Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler, I don't think we've seen a better on-ball defender on the Miami Heat than Davion Mitchell. And the fact that he can shoot the catch and shoot three, that just helps. So Davion Mitchell needs to be given some love because he is frustrating some of the league's best guards. Tyrese Maxey had a couple of forced turnovers by Bam Adebayo, and Davion Mitchell just switching on to him and causing him fits. And that kind of like summarizes how good of a season Davion Mitchell is having. The moral of the story for the Heat is their offense will be fine no matter who's playing with Tyler Hero, Norm Powell, whatever in the regular season. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they lack that generational superstar that they had with Jimmy Butler. That, there's a 1A and 1B in Tyler and Bam, but there is a number one premium with Jimmy Butler that they lost. Mm-hmm. And that's why they're probably going to get eliminated at second round in the playoffs, maybe first round. But it would not be crazy to say in an East that we agree is wide open. I mean, you picked the Raptors as a dark horse to win the East. Mm-hmm. I think we can agree that no one wants to play the Miami Heat. No one wants to play Eric Spoelstra in a playoff series anyway. Miami's problems have always been health, so I would be stupid to say I'm confident that they will be healthy in the playoffs. But if you somehow get a healthy Tyler Hero, Norm Powell, Bam Adebayo, Khalil Ware, Davion Mitchell in the playoffs, you are essentially an Andrew Wiggins trade for someone who is a better fit for the team away from potentially being an Eastern Conference contender. No one wants to play this team, and the pace, gig, the pace tactic, being number one in the NBA in pace, they're going to continue being among the league leaders in pace, but now we're going to start seeing some pick and roll because Tyler Hero said, we need to start playing some pick and roll as well now that I'm back and playing with Bam. They haven't even pulled that pick and roll stuff out of the bag yet, which they were very good at last year, even with Jimmy off the floor. They haven't even pulled that out of the bag yet, and they're playing so well. The Heat are an Andrew Wiggins trade away from being an Eastern Conference contender, so that's all I'll say about them now.
And it's funny because Wiggins is the guy being floated around with the Lakers. But and I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. Do you see a position or a guy or a need out there that can be returned from an Andrew Wiggins? It's never a 1-to-1. Sometimes you get 75 cents on the dollar, but is there a guy out there that you'd be taking a flyer on that you really think could help this team long term?
I mean, I'm the guy that looks for role player gems around the league. I mean, no one saw the Quentin Grimes for Caleb Martin trade last year. I didn't because I thought Quentin Grimes was way better than Caleb Martin. It would be interesting to me, if we were having this conversation in January where it was more clear which role players were on the trade block. I would have a list of answers. So I don't mind that question because I'm so ready for the trade deadline. Keon Ellis, you mentioned for the Lakers, Keon Ellis would be fantastic to pair with Davion Mitchell, just Davion Mitchell's backup. He'd be a perfect fit for the Heat. Again, good 3-point shooter that defends 1-2 at a very, very high level. But also Trenton Watford for the Sixers. He signed on a very short deal with the Sixers. I wanted Trenton Watford as a sneaky addition, for the Heat in the offseason. Of course, he went to the Sixers because the Sixers love taking all the role players I love. If Trenton Watford is somehow available for trade, I've heard some murmurs about it.
Yeah.
I'm Trenton Watford on the team because he is so switchable. He guards 1 through 5, not at the highest of levels like Bam Adebayo, obviously, but he holds his own defensively. And he is a great, great transition player. And that would be a perfect fit for a team that ranks number 1 in pace. So I want a versatile wing like that. And maybe we'll have a more definitive list of choices when we rediscuss this in January.
Sure. Guy that stood out to me when the Kings made the announcement, it's a fire sale for pretty much everybody. Devin Carter, kid from Providence. I think he was a top 15 pick. Where did he go? He went 13th. He went 13th overall 2 years ago. Never really got the burn. I mean, they're guard heavy over in Sacramento, and it's a shit show. But he's a guy, in a Davion Mitchell light, in a in a Keon Ellis light. Can we get this guy who does all the little things, prides himself on defense? Can he get out and transition? He has a positive plus minus for the season. I'm looking at it right now. Yes, they're 1-7, but if there's a fire sale, he's the guy where it might be your bargain bin hunting. Give me Devin Carter and I'll give you, 2 seconds or so, or some cash swaps in a second. Let me roll the dice on this guy.
I think that's a great transition for me to talk about one more team before we talk about perhaps my favorite topic on the ledger today, which you have. But speaking of stars that are potentially on the trade, speaking of role players that are potentially on the trade block, there's this player that many people view as a star that I just don't, and I think if his team finds a way to trade him before it's too late, their future can be so bright. LaMelo Ball has this reputation of being this franchise-altering point guard that can turn around a purgatory team and make them a finals contender if he takes a little bit of a leap. I don't see it. I think the year he made an all-star game, it was debatable whether he should have even been an all-star. And every time I watch Hornets film, it's the complete opposite reaction that gambling Twitter has when they see LaMelo Ball benched, which is they're always confused why LaMelo Ball is sitting on the bench in big moments. And this is before, his injury concern and before he was on a minutes limit. But even when he wasn't on a minutes limit, last year he was getting benched in the clutch very often. Charles Lee is a good head coach, not just because he's okay with doing that, but because he's turned a Hornets team that doesn't have many great individual defenders, he's turned them into a defense that is not a walkover. You don't love facing them because they're so good in transition. They won't allow too many wide open threes. They do a lot of little things right, and that's coaching to me. So Charles Lee, I think, is the right man for the job. And there's so many players on this team over the last couple of years that I've loved for the Hornets. Like Josh Green, to me, was like one of my favorite role players last year. He's hurt right now. They draft Con Knippel, who has a real shot at winning Rookie of the Year. Like, this is already one of the best overall shooters in the NBA, because if you look at the duress under which he makes some of these shots, it feels like a young Klay Thompson. Con Knippel is awesome. And to me, like, since last year, Brandon Miller has been the best player on the team. I hope we get to see a fully healthy Brandon Miller next season. But Brandon Miller, like, he feels like a prime Paul George in the making, right? And the reason Paul George will be in Hall of Fame consideration, all things said and done, is because of like all the traits that Brandon Miller seems to have. He does take some bad shots, but a lot of it is because he is put in grenade situations. And a lot of it is because LaMelo Ball dribbles so much and he only passes for an assist, right? And on top of all of this, he has defensive issues. He has focus issues. He gets benched for good reason. The Hornets have the opportunity to land one of the best futures in the NBA if they sell high on LaMelo Ball. And I don't even know if it's a sell high with him being hurt right now, but I don't think the price is going to go up too much because this is not a franchise-altering player. This is not even the best player on the team. And I wrote this all in my notes before Miles Bridges said this morning that Con Knippel has been the best player on the team this year. So I think the Hornets should trade LaMelo Ball ASAP Rocky.
I would agree. And I'm also pretty bullish on Brandon Miller. I see the potential there. I had the two guys I bet for most improved player going into the season were Jalen Johnson and Brandon Miller, because I saw Brandon Miller being a guy who could be like 23 to 25 points per game in the right offense. Obviously, injuries are kind of crushing that, but I think he's supposed to be back potentially Wednesday.
He did play already, and so it's up to them for the minutes restriction now. But he's already played this season since his return.
No, he's played this season. I'm sorry, he's coming back. I think it says Wednesday. So Wednesday's game against the Knicks, he's not on the injury report. So I'll be curious if Brandon Miller comes back tomorrow. Tomorrow the 26th when we do it. So no, I totally agree. I wish I had a little more pushback. I'm not sold on LaMelo Ball. The reason that he is a potential, all NBA guy, it's really just the hype. The youth love this guy. They love his shoes. I see so many kids with his Pumas. But he's not a guy I would build around. The playmaking's there. I mean, I'd love to see him get in the hands of like a Jason Kidd. Like somebody who could just be like, listen, dude, you have a skill set that just needs to be honed and refined, and it can be winning basketball. The way you're doing it right now is not winning basketball, but it exists. You just got to listen to me. We'll see if that happens. We're really good at the segues, man. I wanted to talk about another guy I think should be traded sooner rather than later. You said the same thing about LaMelo. I was watching the Grizzlies last night because I genuinely like watching the Nuggets a lot this season. I was not disappointed by either side, actually. But the sooner that Ja Morant is moved, the better the Grizzlies will be this season and beyond. The talent on this team is sneaky. Like, I would take the talent over this team over Washington, obviously over Brooklyn. Maybe not as good as the top two guys in Charlotte with Knippel and Brandon Miller, but like top to bottom, I mean, they've got Aldama, Cedric Howard, Zach Edey. Jalen Wells went off last night for like 23, 24. Vince Williams Jr., and we still haven't seen Ty Jerome or Scottie Pippen Jr. yet. So this is a team that I want to see grow, and I think the way they do that is kind of put this Ja Morant stuff behind them. And what does that trade look like? I know we're going to talk about trades in a minute, but the team getting floated is Minnesota. Ja Morant, Anthony Edwards. I'm okay taking 50 cents on the dollar for Ja Morant because it's off the court stuff. Two, I mean, his general maturity isn't there. We saw with Klay Thompson this week. But if you give me Jaden McDaniels, Terrence Shannon Jr., and you can even you can make it top 3 protected in 2028, I'll give you Ja Morant. Give me you can keep the Randall, Gobert. They may not have the money for it. I have to take a look. But you can keep that core. Just give me Jaden McDaniels and Terrence Shannon Jr. as a throw-in, whatever protections you want. But I genuinely think John Morant, they're just going to get tired of it.
And it's funny that you're mocking him to a team like the Timberwolves, because I have issues myself with some of the players on the Timberwolves that are not named Jaden McDaniels. Like, I think Jaden McDaniels is such a bright spot for them in a season that's involved some pretty bad losses. So I think that's pretty funny. And Anthony Edwards and John Morant and Rudy Gobert all on the same team would make me a full Timberwolves hater. And I don't want that to happen. I love my people from Minnesota, but all jokes aside, I think, like, you mentioning Jason Kidd is like a perfect segue into the last team I want to talk about today, which is the Mavericks have way too many talented pieces on the roster to be this bad. Now, I know Cooper Flag needs some, physical maturing in the league. I mean, he's still 18 years old. Like, not everyone enters the league and becomes LeBron James and Victor Wembanyama right away. Like, Cooper Flag will be fine. I promise you, he's a generationally skilled player. I promise you he was beating NBA players when he was in high school and ones. I promise you he has the tools to be a success in the NBA. I've already seen some improvements from him in the first few games. I promise you he'll be fine. PJ Washington, to me, is like a very versatile wing player that doesn't get used the same way every night, even though he probably should be, because he can do a little bit of everything. Klay Thompson obviously having a bad year, but I want to see more possessions from the Mavericks that aren't D'Angelo Russell dribbling for 18 seconds and then passing it to Najee Marshall for a contested three. The list goes on with how many disappointing things I've seen from the Mavericks, despite the fact that they have some great individual players. Like Brandon Williams, I think, gets super underrated. Like, this is a guy who could potentially be a bucket in this league. I was talking trash about Jason Kidd's coaching, his lineups, his adjustments within the series in the playoffs when they beat the Thunder, made it to the finals. I kept reiterating this is, completely getting carried. We're overlooking Jason Kidd's deficiencies because we're watching the greatness of Luka Doncic at work, of Kyrie Irving at work. We don't give Jason Kidd enough credit for stunting the development of some of these Mavericks lineups. The ATOs are absolutely awful. I'd have to let the sample size get a little larger and pull up some numbers from tracking data on who the worst ATO teams in the league are this season. I'm sure the Mavericks are up there because every single time they have an ATO, it's an isolation into a contested shot. And there have been some close games this season that they've lost because the lineups make absolutely no sense. So we don't give enough credit to Jason Kidd for how bad he is, which is my main takeaway from the Mavericks so far this season. They have no business being this bad, despite their few injuries and despite, the curse of Luka or whatever. Like, Jason Kidd is not a good head coach in this league. And Giannis joked the other day that, like, I had to hit some threes against the Mavericks because Jason Kidd told me, not to shoot threes. Like, you mentioned that Jason Kidd has been good for the development of some players, and absolutely, he obviously does some good things. That's why he keeps, these head coaching jobs. He does some good things that we don't necessarily see. But in terms of in-game product, this is an awful, awful, awful product. We got to stop crowning head coaches for making it to a finals once. We got to stop crowning, people in consensus agree Doc Rivers is not a good head coach now, and he won a championship. We got to start agreeing as a consensus that Jason Kidd is not a good head coach.
The only thing I'll push back on is that they've just been wildly inconsistent in terms of what their rotations are. I mean, Lively, your fellow Dookie, they're 3-4. They're almost 500 when he plays. Problem is, he only played 7 games this season. So you got him, you got Gafford in and out of the lineup. Your ball dominant guy is an 18-year-old kid. So I also don't know if I would have Cooper Flag bringing the ball up as much. I'd probably get the ball out of his hands, which is a coaching mistake. So I somewhat agree with you on that. It's just, I think this team, for everything that was going into the season, they've just been a revolving door of who do we got tonight? We got Gafford's playing, Lively's not. Lively's okay, cool. We can go double big here. D'Angelo Russell is what he is. Max Christie is what he is. Klay Thompson at this point in his career, John Morant was wrong. He was disrespectful. He has no idea who he was talking to. He kind of is a bum, right now. I mean, it's terrible to say he's playing basketball the worst of his career. And that's Father Time. That's not Klay Thompson's fault. Do I think John Morant should have went and said that to him? No, he shouldn't. But people love coming at Klay because of his off the court stuff at this point. I think I would like to see, if you can give me a 15, 20 game sample size of this team as healthy it's going to be, and not Anthony Davis. Take him off the page, because I think he's a guy that might get moved. I would put a little bit more stock in that than this kind of revolving door that we've seen at a kid. But I mean, if I'm looking at the matchups, I'm sorry. I want to check out the strength of schedule for these guys.
I mean, while you do that, I'm just like, I feel like you mentioned like a lot of the good things about the Mavericks and a lot of the bad things. And I like agree. It's not an easy job when you have a different list of players available every game. Like I agree with that. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of head coaches in this league where if you give them the exact same situation, they're not 5-14 bad. I'm just saying.
Probably not. No, they're 9-10 or whatever. But
sure,
I agree. Okay, you want to put a bow on this with some trades?
You know what? Let's do exactly that. You alluded to one above, so I'm gonna let you pick one. Who is the best player that will get traded this season? So we talked about players that should get traded. Who is the best player that will get traded this season? Make your prediction right now. Pick one player. Where do they go? Give me the package, the whole deal.
Kind of spoiled it when I brought up John Morant, because it was one of my observations just watching this team last night. I do think John Morant gets moved. I do like the idea of McDaniels, Terrence Shannon. And is it an unprotected first? Is it top 3 protected? You can do whatever you want. Just get John Morant the hell out of there. LaMelo Ball, we're kind of lockstep on that. You got a good guy that I won't step on. I wouldn't be shocked if Anthony Davis gets moved. And I don't know. But, I mean, it kind of ties into what you're saying, where this team is greatly underperformed. It is the Cooper Flagg team. He's gained some weight. There's new management, and they may just want to blow it up. Who do they go to? Who would Anthony Davis go to? New York, the Knicks, maybe. There's certain teams like the Cavs I'd love to see make a move, but they literally can't. I think they're the only team above the second apron, so they can't do anything. Anthony Davis, I would not be shocked if he gets moved at some point this season. I don't have a destination for you, because that's a fine ribbon to tie, but Anthony Davis would be okay, yeah, they're really blowing it up again.
And I like the fact that there's so many like big names that have a realistic shot of getting traded is exactly why like I want to get a prediction in now. Nothing's going to beat the Luka trade, but we talk about like an actual contender trading for one of the best players that have a chance of getting traded. I genuinely think that Lauri Markkanen has a chance to get traded and will get traded to some team this year. And I think the Detroit Pistons are going to be aggressive enough to make that move. So I'm predicting Lauri Markkanen to the Pistons in a deal involving Tobias Harris, Ron Holland, and picks. Now, there were some pretty reliable sources that said that if the Pistons do trade for Lauri Markkanen, it's going to cost Ausar Thompson. I will flat out say that trade will not happen. The Pistons will not trade Ausar Thompson. They realize what they have in him. And the truth about Ausar Thompson is he's a better defender than his brother. He's not as good of an offensive player as his brother yet, but he's great in transition. And given how much skill they have at their other positions, they don't really need Ausar Thompson to pick up a 3-point jumper anytime soon to be an Eastern Conference contender. What they need is continue being good in transition, improve your free throws a little bit, which he has, and continue being one of the best one-on-one defenders in the NBA. Which, if the officiating went fairly against their series in New York, Ausar Thompson's defense might be the reason we're talking about the Pistons potentially winning that series. And I love Ausar Thompson as a future piece for the Pistons. I don't think I do think that the Pistons should think very highly of him, and I don't think he's going to be put in a package for Lauri. So if the Lauri trade happens, it'll be because the Pistons do the right thing. They say goodbye and thank you to Tobias Harris for the service. And they also sell on Ron Holland, who we know who he is at this point, right? He's a transition body who's not super skilled putting the ball on the floor. He hustles a lot, but he's often overly physical. He, has brain farts on both sides of the ball, and he's mature enough. He's old enough to realize that, he's not going to get much, much better. So much so that they wouldn't pull the trigger on the trade for Lauri. The Pistons rank number 18 in 3-point percentage. That's probably their only weakness because they're already a great transition team. They rank slightly above average in pace. And Duncan Robinson, by the way, shout out my boy, fellow, podcast host Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson having a great season. He's carrying their 3-point efficiency right now. Yep. He's playing better than Malik Beasley played last year for them, which was a high bar. So adding Lauri to that mix where Lauri doesn't have to be a number one option ever because Cade gets to do that at some times. And then Dennis Jenkins can ball handle too, the discovery for them this season. Jalen Duren actually knows how to play the post now. So Lauri is just an immaculate fit for the Pistons. And if they make that trade, I think they're easily the best team in the East. So I'm going to predict that.
The only thing I would push back on is Danny Ainge doesn't lose trades. And I think if he made the trade as you laid out, only getting back Tobias Harris, Ron Holland, and picks, and I don't know what the picks would look like. Assuming Cade Cunningham is what we all think he is, it's not going to be a lottery pick. I would want Jaden Ivey, which creates some other issues with Isaiah Collier and, Keontae George. But if I'm Ainge, he's not a stranger just collecting assets. So only tweak I would make to this, Tobias Harris has to be in it, I think, for the money. But I would swap probably Ivy for Ron Holland. And I'm curious what the picks are. But you don't want to trade with Danny Ainge. And he kind of overplayed his hand with Lauri Markkanen. He's been holding on to this asset for the last year and a half, 2 years, thinking it was going to bring this massive payday. And if he comes away with Tobias Harris, Ron Holland, and picks, that's very un-Danny Ainge-like of him. That's the only thing I would say.
Yeah, I feel you. And as someone who was very high on Jaden Ivey, by the way, and the fact that Dennis Jenkins is doing what I thought Jaden Ivey would be doing for this team, right? I'm very high on Jaden Ivey. So not only does that mean it would hurt to make that trade for me, but you're probably right that it would be more of a Danny Ainge thing if he gets a player with that high of a ceiling in the return. So, yeah, I mean, Danny Ainge at some point, you got to start comparing him to me as a fantasy football manager because I would rather not make a trade and have FOMO than make a bad trade. So I respect Danny Ainge for that. And yeah, you're probably right that he would see through the nonsense with Ron Holland and ask for more.
But I mean, everything else spot on. If Detroit gets Lauri Markkanen, I would put a little bit of money on them coming out of the East.
Yeah.
But
Bobby, you managed to get through a whole show with a flu, and we had a great show. We talked about some potential trades in freaking November because that's what we do. But we're going to be back every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We're live twitch.tv/ShahanR. And if you want Bobby's articles for NBA, which come every Friday, week 1, it was Derek Queen analysis, and Derek Queen had his best games of the season after Bobby's article. Last week, we talked about some Rockets and Cavs. Every Friday, Bobby writes some words in our NBA blog. And if you want my NBA bets, all of that, plus fantasy football, plus other sports bets, in our Discord, wap.com/ball-institute. But otherwise, we'll see you all next Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. for another episode of Above the Break.
Happy Thanksgiving.